So, Eric, I'm trying to remember. So, was Ted not actively involved in the company at the time that went down?
No.
Ted had stepped back already. Is that correct?
Well, yeah. And step back is putting it mildly.
Yeah.
I think, and I've seen interviews that Ted has done, since that time. Certainly, I don't talk to him anymore. But the whole AOL Time Warner merger was a giant cluster. There's been books written about it. What a disaster of a merger. In fact, the best book that you could possibly read on this subject is a book called When Fools Rush In by an author by the name of Mina Monk. And it really describes the cluster, just the politics, the mess, and the financial disaster that AOL Time Warner and Turner became. And one of the biggest casualties was Ted Turner himself.
Of course, I heard that was from AOL, though, right?
It was AOL Time Warner. Ted agreed to the merger and agreed to terms within that merger that effectively took him out of direct control that he'd enjoyed at Turner Broadcasting. But he did so believing, quite honestly, I think, that he could trust Joe Levin and he could trust the people involved. And immediately after the merger was finalized, they showed him to his office and said, "Here, just sit here and do whatever you want to do, but you're no longer involved in the decision making process."
Yeah, what a ridiculous decision!
And so, when you ask me, Rick, was Ted involved? He had a figurehead title at that time, but he no longer had any operational stroke whatsoever.
Yeah.
And that actually started about 1998 when the whole AOL Time Warner, well, it was actually Time Warner first, but when the Time Warner merger started, percolating, I think around early 98, is when, Ted started really losing gradually, didn't happen overnight, but gradually losing operational control.
Yeah. Well, I can remember you and I talking one day. I think we were at Jocks and Jill's or whatever that place was called.
Yeah, the base of the CNN Center.
Yeah, and this was right at the end, and Eric and I were talking about the fact that the Braves went up for sale, and they wanted $400 million for him, and Ted didn't have the money to pay him. He had the money, but he wasn't going to. And the Braves were his passion. Would you agree, Eric?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, he went to games all the time, but they went up for sale for $400 million. He didn't buy them. And so it wasn't he didn't have the money, but, the right.
It wasn't a good investment at the time.
Yeah, because he got burnt so bad. I thought it was on AOL stock, but it was a combination of both.
Yeah, well, when Turner first, the first deal they did was with Time Warner, and then shortly after that, on the heels of that, then, AOL came in. AOL barely exists anymore as it did back then.
Yeah.
You can't even find them on NASDAQ, I don't believe.
Yeah.
But at that time, that was at the time of the Internet bubble, Steve Case and AOL, everybody thought the entire world was going to revolve around them. And the bottom fell completely out of it. I'll tell you how bad it was, not to go too far into the weeds here on business things. But when I left WCW in September of 1999, I had 2.5 years left on my contract. And they sent me home. And I wasn't making the kind of money that Rick made or the kind of money that Talent made, but I was doing all right. I was living there somewhere between $500,000 and $700,000 a year with bonuses and crap like that. But I had acquired over the years a lot of stock options. And at the time, I didn't really know what stock options were. I didn't follow it closely. I'd get these things every quarter, and I'd stick in my file on my desk, and I got stock options. Never really paying attention to any of it. Well, when they finally decided to bring me back for a brief period of time after the Russo disaster, while I was still under contract, but they had triggered a clause in my contract that was it's called pay or play. And once you trigger a pay or play provision in the contract, you can't go back and change your mind. You can't say, okay, just go home, we're going to pay out the rest of your contract, and then 6 months later, go, we changed our mind, we're going to bring you back. It doesn't work that way. So when they triggered the pay or play provision in my contract in September of 1999, and then in 2000 decided, whoops, we screwed up, we better bring him back, it gave me leverage to renegotiate my deal. And I said, okay, look, you guys are a mess. I don't want to be an employee. I don't want to be the president of the company. I don't want to be in charge of anything. I'll be a consultant. I'll get involved. I'll be on camera. But I'm not going to be an employee. I'm going to go do other things. And they agreed to that. In fact, they paid me more money. What they did is they bought out my old contract at 100 cents on a dollar. Not 90, not 95, 100 cents on a dollar. And then they wrote me a new contract. They paid it out, terminated it, and then simultaneously wrote me a new contract as an independent contractor. But what happened was, when they paid out my previous contract and therefore terminated it in order to enter into a new one, I was no longer an employee. Well, I got a call about a week later from somebody in Turner who says, okay, well, you have 30 days to exercise your options. I didn't even know what that meant. So I go in my file, I get all my stock options out, and I look at it, and I go, holy crap, I got about $1.5 million sitting here. I didn't even know it was in my desk.
Oh, my God.
So my average strike price was around $13. AOL Time Warner stock, or Time Warner stock, at the head of the merger, was trading for about $98 a share.
Wow.
And I'm just doing the math in my head going, holy crap, I'm really, really doing well here. But I didn't want to sell the stock because every morning it was going up and up and up and up and up. And I'm thinking, man, this is great. Long story short, I didn't have any options. I called an attorney. I hired an attorney. I tried to force them to let me keep my options. None of that worked. I had to sell my stock. I sold it at about 102 or 103 bucks a share, somewhere in there. Maybe under 100, I don't remember, but it was close. And made a boatload of money. And then about 6 months later, AOL Time Warner stock was trading at about 11.
Oh, that's where Ted lost all his money.
Yep. And so did a lot of people.
I already lost like $4 billion.
Yeah. And,
I mean,
and, people like Brad Siegel and, people that were at my level and above me, they're the ones that really suffered the most. They got crushed.
Yeah. Hey, I've got to tell you something, Eric, and interesting in this conversation, and if it hadn't happened, and I can find the name. So I'm on a plane with, and I want to get a comment on this because it doesn't matter to me, and I'm sure you don't care either. I'm on a plane flying somewhere with a woman who is taking her daughter. I'm trying to think where I was going. Her daughter was going to enroll in Juilliard.
Okay, yeah.
In New York City. I must have been going to New York, right? So, and her husband worked for Turner. And she goes, I know who you are. And my husband was there while you were there. And I cannot think of his name. And I said, so, you'll love this. She said, what did you think of Harvey Schiller? And I said, I don't know. I didn't know him very well. And she said, he may go down in history as the biggest loser in the history of Turner Broadcasting.
Wow.
Have you ever heard that, Eric?
No, I never did. Harvey. I didn't always get along with Harvey.
No, but I liked him. He was, a nice guy. But I guess they just thought that he was a disaster. This guy has been there forever. He knew Brad Siegel. I mean, the woman knew all the names. And I can't think of. I mean, she knew remember that you had me do a couple speaking engagements for people that were big in the company, and she knew everybody, like Bill and all those guys. And she said, "What'd you think of Harvey Schiller?" I said, "I didn't know him very well. I mean, he came to Sturgis and all that." And she said, "He'll go down in history as the biggest loser in the history of Turner Broadcasting." And Eric, I'm not asking you to comment on that. I'm just saying that there was a name out of the past. I'd forgotten all about Harvey Schiller, So
yeah, Harvey took over for Bill Shaw, and I wasn't happy about that because I really loved Bill Shaw.
Yeah.
And we're still friends to this day. And I was so comfortable with Bill, and there was a trust level
he was
there.
a nice guy.
We had great momentum. We had great momentum together. And then Harvey came in and took over WCW because it fell under Turner Sports, and Harvey was the president of Turner Sports. And Harvey was, former military. I think he was a major in the Air Force. So he was a very, crew cut, very, buttoned down, kind of what you would imagine an Air Force major or colonel to be like. And he kind of ran his business like that. So it was a little bit of a conflict with me because I was more of a nonconformist from a corporate point of view. But we ended up really developing good trust together. Harvey was only there for a short period of time, but I will say this. Harvey was a political animal. Harvey saw what was going on at a much higher level at Turner than I did, certainly at a much higher level during the AOL Time Warner merger than I was capable of understanding or exposed to. Mm-hmm. And Harvey I think Harvey really saw himself as the president of Turner Broadcasting to take over Terry McGurk's position.
Yeah.
And
that's right. That was the name I was looking for, Terry McGurk. Yeah.
Yeah. I think he wanted. This
woman knew everybody.
I think he wanted Terry McGurk's job, and it didn't work out for him. But I will say this: Harvey Schiller left with a boatload of money.
Of course.
And he went to work for George Steinbrenner.
Yeah.
And I think he is. I don't want to say he's a member, president, or one of the top executives at the U.S. Olympic Committee, or one of the larger sanctioning bodies in U.S. sports.